Great Tuesday. Welcome to the Becoming More Fully Human podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Rachel, Jess, and Todd. How you all doing today?
Very
Great.
good.
And as we like to get things started to really set the context and the energy of today's show, let's go around and each say our spiritual energy numbers from 0 being life sucks to 10 being life is awesome. And before you do, let me set the context why I asked that question and where that scale comes from. The reason I asked that question in my work, and I've been working in community now for different nonprofit organizations for over 30 years. I remember one of them, Impact Silver Spring, used to have a check-in, and the check-in would just ask you, what's your number? And they let people just say what their number was, because the intent was to understand that everybody's bringing different energy to that meeting. And if a person's energy is a certain level lower, then they're going to get their shadow self probably, or you're going to get their selves that's not really fully present, just not really engaged, because they could have got caught off in traffic, been arguing with their spouse, their kids could have done something. Anything could have happened before the meeting started. And if you don't do a check-in, you're not going to find out why that person is in that space that they're in. So that's why the check-in is important. It's not your permanent number. It's just your number in that moment before the meeting starts. Being 0, or you saying life sucks, life is happening to me, I just feel like a victim right now. Or are you saying I'm a 10, life is awesome, I'm happy to be alive, I'm grateful. So that's where that question comes from. Because what I've learned, and repeatedly, is that when people say 6 or below, that it's best to cancel that meeting, or I'm not cancel, but reschedule that meeting, because you're not going to get a person fully engaged. You're just not going to be there. And I've learned myself, when I'm not feeling at a 10, it's time for me to ask for grace in that meeting as well. I don't just jump and schedule meetings. I ask for grace for that, because I'm not going to be my best. And it's just right now, my mind's not there, and I'm just not really ready to be engaged. So that's where the question comes from. So now, with that context being said, what's your spiritual energy number? I'll go with yourself first, Todd.
Oh, that's always interesting to me to put a number on it lately. I've been tuning in spiritually for a couple hours now, and there's a large field of different things to look at. So I'd say I'm a 10, and there's a big array of frequencies, but I stay tuned to the clearest ones that I can get to, and kind of let all the other ones go wherever they need to go. In fact, it's reminding me of a prayer I once knew. Now I'm going to have to get it back, or an affirmation, which was basically, this is my 3-foot bubble here, and this is what I fill it with. And I'm saying it in my own mind when I was having trouble with an individual. And then I offer them, I go, you can have the rest of the universe. It's fine by me. You just can't have this space right here. So that's what comes to mind. So my 3-foot space is pretty full.
Excellent. And Rachel, how about yourself? What would you say your spiritual energy number is?
Well, following off of what Todd was saying, Todd, that was Keith Leon S. that said, I have enough to take care of with my 3 feet. And I forget where he got it from, but when he said my 3 feet, it was my 2 feet planted on the ground and the foot radius around my body. And that's how he always was sharing things with me about how he took care of his energy and then expanded from there. But I think we all have enough to take care of in our own 3 feet. And I can say that with all that I'm up against and dealing with and moving and shaking, I am so damn happy to be here and alive. So I think that speaks volumes for itself. So 10 plus on my scale.
Excellent. Jess, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a 10. I'm so grateful to be here.
Excellent. Well, I'm a 10. I join each of you at a 10. And I'm a 10. And again, one other thing I want to add to it is this, that I don't always wake up at 10, but when I go through my gratitude list, things that I'm grateful for, such as my height, my ability, my eyes, my life, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, and breathe, that puts me at a 10 because that makes me feel abundant. And I'm abundant, and that sets my attitude level, my gratitude level. And I believe that's the abundance you need to be at when you're looking to manifest things in your life. And so I just want to share that with you all because I think that's very important as we go forth building with each other and with other people, understanding what people's spiritual energy numbers are before you start to engage in dialogue with them. I think it's key because, again, a person who brings a different energy level and energy number to the conversation is not going to want to communicate. They're going to want to come in and teach or come in and give you their perspective and more likely not be open to hearing your perspective. And I think a lot of people are there. And so that's what I believe is a great segue into our discussion today. We're going to talk about the architecture of the 6 connecting rings. And again, me being a system engineer, and I use that as my form of identity because I think in frameworks. It puts my mind in always looking at things and how do I understand something? And I understand it by giving it a numerical value. And I've learned that through my life, from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People to the 4 Agreements to the 17 Lessons of the Law of Success by Napoleon Hill to the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Everyone has some form of number that you can add. That's how numerology plays such an important role in our lives. And so from that, and from what I've learned as a person who is a system engineer and also a connector who studies human behavior, I've always looked at how do you figure out quickly and discern when you're making a connection, whether somebody is someone that you really want to connect with and build with. And I've gone through all kind of ways to look at that, analyze that, dissect that. And I've learned through the years, gaining wisdom, making mistakes, being wrong, to come up with these 6 key connecting rings here. And it's not only connecting with other people, it's also connecting with yourself because you want to understand where you are at every one of these rings and can you answer each one for yourself, not for anyone else, but can you, for your own sanity, your own clarity, say to yourself, I know clearly what my identity is. I understand what my purpose is. I know what value I'm bringing to the world. I know how I take action and how I'm showing up. I know how I extend trust and how I establish trust. And then finally, I want to operate and vibrate in love. And so that to me it's a self-check as well as understanding when you're building relationships and connections with others, knowing which ring you are at when you're meeting someone, and then how to go about moving to the next ring. And it's not just a simple matter of, well, yeah, we met on identity, so now we're at value. And you think that way logically, but then you realize that purpose wasn't very clear. So now you're trying to do value and exchange value and create value, but you're not really clear on what your purpose of connecting is. And that's why I've learned that it's imperative in relationships as you're building with people to get in written form, basically alignment before you move to the next ring. And some people may say, well, that's just too technical. That's too difficult. And I don't want to go through all that. And I get it. But what I've learned, if you don't do it, then you're going to have problems further down into the ring and as you build and more further down the relationship. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So let's start with identity. And let's say that we start off with, we didn't really touch on identity as much. We both say that we're human beings and we just want to leave it at that. And so that's the simplest way so that we can move on. So we talk about purpose. Now, purpose is to make the world a better place. So we're going to create an impact and say, okay, great. So let's move to value. So how do we create the impact? And you say, well, here's the value we want to create into the marketplace. We're going to create an impact fund that goes along and helps children in the communities in these inner cities get more access to clean and healthy drinking water, better food options because there's food deserts. And then we want to also have some form of child development around their education. So then you engage in action at that point. So now you begin to talk about how do we go about doing it. And action is always going to take physical action, financial action from some form or another, as well as social capital action, where you got to bring people together to make it happen. And if you haven't really got an identity worked out by the time you get to the action ring, that's where someone can be triggered. So now, and I've watched it happen, people being triggered by their religious faith. And that comes up in a meeting at that action level now, because someone says something about a person's religious faith or their color of their skin or their gender. And it wasn't an insult. It was just something said out of ignorance. They didn't understand the cultural values or the mores. So now the meeting got to be held up. The energy got to be held up because that person's offended by that. Because identity really wasn't worked out at the very beginning to realize, do I really want to work with someone who so identity that they see the lens through their perspective is locked in on either their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, their trauma, their country, their anything that separates us and makes us see someone external from us as an other. Any identity that tells you that someone is an other to you, that's going to get triggered down the road. And I've seen it happen in real time, play itself out, regardless of the intent. It can always happen. So I just wanted to lead the conversation with that, get your thoughts on it, and just see what your thoughts are, first of all, on the disconnecting rings, or what do you want to chime in on anything I've said thus far. Now, how about we start with yourself, Rachel, to see what your energy is feeling on this?
Well, the whole time you're talking, I'm looking at the rings, and I know I've shared this before. And I always love that you come up with these systems. I'm not quite a systems kind of gal. I'm like kind of a free-for-all wildfire. And seeing somebody develop a system to something is always an awe for me. Like, and I have my own systems as well. It's not like I'm totally haphazard, but while you were talking, I was looking at this diagram and I'm like, well, at any given moment, and I've had this happen, somebody could just spark wide open with this amazing blast of love, and then boom, all of those things come into alignment. Just boom, 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 boom. If you're standing in a space of love and you walk by the most racist guy in town, and I've experienced this personally, I'm standing in my little love bubble, and the big old mean racist guy is standing next to me, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I don't know what happens, but everything starts to like configure, and they can't somehow deny that portion of it. That being said, typically that only lasts for a few moments. So then, yeah, then you go back to at least recognizing, from my perspective, recognizing where they're at with their identity. And I guess a lot of the times I don't recognize people where they're at with their identity, which allows me to be in that little bubble sometimes. But if I'm working forward and trying to create something with someone, I have to make sure that we're on a common ground for a sense of purpose. So, and always the sense of purpose is heartfelt. You know, it's even if it's the most intellectual thing in the world, our hearts have to be able to connect on it. Like we have to have this passion about it, and in order to bring any value to it, otherwise there is no value to it. We're just working on some ho hum thing that the rest of the world's trudging through. And once you reach that point of value and recognizing that value between you, then you really can start amping things up, because you know the power. You know, one person can do something, but the more people involved, the more energy involved, the bigger and bigger and more powerful something becomes. So then you can start to take more actions in more different directions, and you really build a true foundation of trust. And then you can loop back around to the love. So I find that the love fits into all of those categories in one way or another, and it is the ultimate when you're, say, working on a project together, or a desired outcome. And in this case with us, you know, the desired outcome can be anything, but it also can be everything. And it needs to be the connection between us all. And if we can help people to find a way that works for them, even if this diagram and this system doesn't hold a concrete means for people to get to that space, it at least gives them something that they can ponder or sit with or adjust so that it works for them. That's all I have to say about it right now.
You know, what's interesting that I wanted to share this with as well is that we've had similar discussions in the past about the connecting rings. And you were the first person that looked at this, and I've shared this with, and I've shared this with a lot of people that ever said that for me, I think love is the first ring. And I was like, wow, you know, that's definitely the end of where I want to be at. And obviously to be at the love ring is where the goal was. And that's where I believe that we all learn from one another. See, my goal is to always be so focused on discernment and othering for the purpose of being in this fourth quarter of my life and only wanting to connect with people who I look at as that really want to co-create and really want to build. And I'm not looking for friendships right now. I'm looking for opportunities to do something greater, to your point, that I can't do by myself. And if friendships develop within those actions, I'm definitely open for that. But just to have someone to drink with, talk sports with, and spend time with because I'm lonely, that time's passed for me and no longer of my interest personally. So I can become very pragmatic in my approach to it. You bring a spiritual approach to it, which I respect and I like, because you're right. You see love as being the first thing. And as you said, the gentleman who was the racist gentleman who may experience that. That's why I see that all of us can be humanity. But I think the identity is the problem there, because once he felt your energy of love, he had to react to that in a way. And then he mentally probably caught himself and said, well, no, I don't want to be happy right now with her. I found a reason not to like her for whatever reason that may be. And his identity is telling him that. And so that he wanted to get back into that thinking, because that's just the way he's been raised. So now with that being said, I want to bring Jess into the conversation. Jess, what are your thoughts on anything we discussed so far?
Yeah, I guess my first thought was just noticing when people come out of alignment. I think it is like the example that you gave of the early childhood situation where we could end up moving into action together and then find out while we're in action together that we're no longer a we. And the thing that I notice is that I observe language quite a bit. And that when we're in alignment, I hear the language of we. We're going to have an event. We're going to do this thing in the community. It's a we. But the moment that the misalignment happens, it becomes a they. They did this. And that's where the separation happens. So I can actually identify the rings based on that languaging. I can identify where we are in our alignment based on that languaging as well. So that's interesting, just like to have an awareness of the rings as I'm in communication. But the other thing that I'm really interested in is this flipping of the rings that Rachel brought up, because when I look at the rings and I see how quickly I do just resonate with love and then move from love, whether it's someone that I've met and I understand their identity or not. And then looking at it the opposite direction of like, if there's someone that I'm having that love connection with, then the first ring would be to build trust with them and then to move into aligned actions together, to build value together, to be connected on our purpose, and then to understand who we are. So I love that it can go backwards and forward, both directions. And for this conversation, I love that we're looking at it from identity first, because it really is the opportunity that we have, for me personally, to not get too far into relationships and then realize the misalignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to that point, you let me say this quickly before I want to bring you in, Todd, is that I was in a meeting last night and I hadn't been in one of these meetings in about a couple of years because I got to the point where I'd grown frustrated with these community meetings of business people who get together and want to talk about doing something greater than we can do individually. And it all sounds great. Everybody's well intended. There's love in the room. People are feeling good. There's food, but everybody using the meeting is pretty well off. We're talking about doing something for someone who isn't usually in the room. So the population of the people we want to help usually is represented. And so we all think we have the best ideals because we're looking at it from a context of what we like their lives to be and what we feel is value. And the question kept coming up about naming things that were successful. And they were naming these corporations that had come along and made a lot of money, and or individuals who had a nice ideal and built a company and then sold it, and they were calling it successful, and they were calling it impact. And for me, I'm looking at, well, I think impact is subjective, just like abundance is subjective, right? If you only quantifying things and value as relates to finances, and then you're saying, okay, well, this person's been impactful because he's been able to sell his company for $5 million, $10 million. But if you look at some people who I know who work in the community, build a nonprofit from scratch, financing themselves with their own money, donating volunteering hours, putting all their love and energy into it, and they've been doing that for 20, 30 years to the point now they're burnt out, never really made a lot of money from it, but they've had a lot of impact in the community, families, people talking about what this person has done for me and the lives they've touched. That doesn't get measured in these conversations like that. There's no KPIs and things that to give that kind of measurement. It's just the community and the energy that was created around it. So I just wanted to bring that up based on what you were saying there, Jess, because that to me is why I wanted to talk about identity being first and foremost. The key thing is that I'm in a diverse room of people, and everyone acts like that's not the gorilla in the room, so to speak. So we all ignore the fact that we're all different as far as physically looking, and we never address the fact that until we do have that conversation, how can we really have true meaningful impact and make that kind of difference? So now with that being said, Todd, I hope I don't want to skew you from the original thoughts you may have had about what Rachel said or what I said, or any thoughts you had about the six connecting rings and where you're feeling your energy in spirit right now.
Oh, no problem. I think just taking in what everyone has to say about this. It's fun. I looked at the image and immediately thought about Rachel starting at the middle. And I knew we'd be talking about this right away the minute it came up. And I had an idea. That to build community, which we're really talking about here, right, is that as an individual, maybe you actually do start in the middle. And because without starting with self-love, how do you get to any of these other points, right? And then that leads into trusting yourself. And at that point, then you start figuring out what actions you can get into with yourself. And that leads to what you value. See, it's all heart-centered, and I think this is what Rachel's saying. And then from that, you start developing a purpose, and then you have an identity. But your identity is based on what's really coming from the core of you, and it's not a manufactured, I would say, type of identity. And I think then from there, you can start bringing in other people. And then at that point, then the larger organization as a whole continues to keep going through this process, whether you say you start at the outside and go into the middle, or maybe it just keeps folding back in on itself. It's a lot like the flower of life structure we've been talking about this whole time, right? You start in the outside and go to the middle, which goes back to the outside. It doesn't really matter which way we order this. In other words, it's holographic. And as long as each individual is staying centered in their own love, and why I have trouble putting a number, what's your number, Todd? I'm like, well, pick a subject. This thing's upsetting me, and this thing I'm really happy about, and I really feel really fortunate to be sitting right here and being able to do this. And to me, it's all at once. But I think that starting with the self-love and the self-trust, you can have that much complexity going on, but at the same time, you're back to, I love myself, so I can allow this person standing next to me to do and say and be however they'd like to be. Eventually I might have to say, okay, I'm right with you, or I might say, no, we're kind of obviously going different directions here. And it kind of, it takes care of itself, is part of what I'm getting at. Story comes to mind. I've done this even just recently with some management issues that my family has as a whole with my 3 other siblings. And, I was the wild man and the crazy man and the unpredictable guy and maybe not as put together. And therefore, that became my identity for a long time. So I had to stay consistent with taking over a certain management position and prove that I'm going to stay consistent and prove that I'm going to act fairly. But once you're willing to go through that process and just keep doing it, even though you're not getting the response you want at first because everybody remembers the old Todd. And so you have to I had to stay consistent and stay really clear and stay really centered in my trust of myself and what I know is right action, and also allowing other people that have their opinion to bring the whole discussion back to something that's functional and productive versus a mess. So I'll leave it at that. As how I see this thing keeps folding in on itself, expanding. You can start from the out of the circle and move to the middle, and move out, and you're going to keep, in one way, it's like peeling the onion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think we're in perfect agreement that there's no way without, the core structure of we're trying to build a community being in the center here in the love, then there's no way it's going to stay together. And the other way around, if you stay there, the parts of who comes and goes and who stays and how it resonates, that all takes care of itself. It all manages itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, one of the things I really think that's important to understand as well is that we talk about, and I like how you phrase it as well, Todd. The key to the understanding is that you have to connect with yourself first. And that's one of the biggest things I'm looking for when I meet someone is, do they know who they are? And do they own their own mind? Now, of course, if you ask a person that question, you own your own mind, the answer is going to be yes. No one's going to admit that, no, I don't own my mind. Someone else does. But there's ways to get to the answer without asking that question directly. And the way to get to that is really understanding what a person's identity is. And did you choose your identity? Because we were definitely given one. So that's without question. You were told when you were born, you either were a boy or a girl. Either you're black or you're white. Either you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or your family was atheist, right? You were taught that. Then you were taught, okay, now you're an American. Then you're also taught, now you are whatever your high school was. That's added to that core. Then if you become an athlete, now it gets thrown on there as well. So now you throw all these identities on. You're a football player. Now you're a quarterback. And each one of these separates you from everybody else. It just keep throwing more and more things on you that you just accept without even having an opportunity to choose. It's just taught that this is how a quarterback thinks. Then you join the military. Now you're a soldier. Then you're an officer if you move up. So it's always these different ways of separating yourself from others and making you see other people as being different. Now, the problem with that is that then you can also be told they're the reason why you're unhappy. It's because these others are doing these things for you. The soldier's not listening, so that's why the officers are not happy. Or the officers are narcissists, and that's why the soldiers are not listening. We can always find reasons why. I remember in school, and my school used to fight a neighboring high school. We just don't know. It's just a history. I think it started 20 years before we did. But now when our two high schools see each other, we got to fight. Nobody understands why, but just because you go to that high school, we go to this high school, we just don't like each other. And that's just how things are, because we were told this identity. And that's fine as you're learning and you're growing. But at some point, I believe every person has to make their own statement of what their identity is, and they choose for themselves. It's their own sovereign identity. I am this person. Now, again, identity is fluid, but I think a lot of people confuse identity with roles. Like your role is a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, an uncle, aunt. That's a role. And you shift into those roles based on who you're engaging with and the energy that's required in the thought process. But identity is how you see the world and how you value people and how you judge people. And more importantly, your identity is, when it comes down to it, where I'm really standing at ring number one, is what you would kill for or what you would die for. One of the other two, one or the other, right? And so that's why that's so important to understand that all the other identities we choose through life, as I went through before, being a Girl Scout, a Boy Scout, all these other things that separate us, those are fine. They have their place as far as development is concerned. When your identity gets in the place of telling you that this is your tribe, this is who you should work with only, and these other people should be treated differently as more and held down, and you're superior or you're inferior to them, whatever your identity is telling you, or those people who's telling you that, you got to question that source. And so with that being said, if anyone had any comments on that, I wanted to give you the opportunity to have any comments on that before we go to our musical break and then transition to our second half of our show, which, Rachel, you mentioned the fact that you asked me about the map of consciousness, and I want to bring it up for our second part of our show after our musical break. But before we do that and shift into that conversation, I wanted to see if anybody has any other thoughts about what I may have just said here, or any other thoughts about anything else that's coming to your mind.
I do. When you were talking about the question why, it came very strongly that in a lot of ways I've kind of given up on using that question, why, because it's kind of vague in a way. And it's relational. It's why is this happening? Or you can put too much of a negative connotation on the question why, and it's just it almost becomes obsolete depending on how grounded you are. Because if you're really grounded in yourself and you really know yourself and who your true identity is, which falls into like any of these given circles, I could connect with love, like identity and love, purpose and love, value and love, trust and love. And if you're solid in all of those in combination with love, you can probably achieve anything. And it's probably like what most people would view as magical if that's something that you can solidly do. So through my experiences recently, the medical realm and the adventures of cancer, I've kind of quit saying why, because when I put myself, I can speak for myself, when I put myself in a state of asking why is this person this way? Why am I this way? Why is that way? It kind of throws you off of your center. It takes away from the ability to. It brings in almost like a judgment factor. Not that it is a judgment factor, but on the other end of it, there is a balance, because when you're utilizing the question why, you're also allowing your creativity and your curiosity to keep flowing as well. So And I just totally verbally processed that while I was saying it. So, but I just find all of these different categories orbiting around each other, interweaving and interflowing with each other. But you touched on something else, which was the alignment and resonance. And you know when you resonate with someone or something, you just know it because you know it. Although in our society, we're taught to not know that and to just keep going, unfortunately. So yeah, good system, King.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to comment as well. And just like piggybacking off of that, when you know it, sometimes based on my conditioning, I've known it. And then I don't know it. You know, there's like a falling out of alignment. And I've been talking about this as I've been going through a 180-day journey of becoming more fully human with King. And just in this process, I've been rebirthing a new identity, which I've done several times. And right now I'm releasing an ebook about rebirthing a new identity. And I look back at like why that would even be needed if I had a knowing back when I chose an identity. And what I think is that sometimes we evolve and that we learn something that we didn't know, and that becomes maybe the why that would have me look at it and say, does that identity still resonate, or does that role even resonate? And just knowing that I have an opportunity at any point that these rings come into a misalignment to relook at it. And what I'm noticing now is that my identity is becoming very light, and not really quite. I'm not really quite able to label myself the way that I have in the past, and I'm more standing in the space of fully human.
Yeah, I'd like to comment quickly too. And Jess, I'd say I can see it. I can see what you've been doing, especially when you say it. It's clear, it's evident. And to me, identity, what with what King's saying, if you ask somebody, who are you, they're going to tell you, oh, well, I do this job, and I went to this school, and I live in this neighborhood, and I like this football team, and none of that's not a real identity. And in my understanding of it, it's manufactured, and we're all doing this. I'm not saying I'm out of the loop, that I'm not part of this, but the process, I think, of getting into where you really love yourself, and it's not over than or more than or other than, it's just that you love yourself, and then it starts revealing your identity, which is really what you're driven to do. And I guess I'm still working on the word identity at this point, because it's I am. We're getting down to the I am thing, where, who are you, Todd? I am. Yeah, but tell me. I'm like, yeah, so you can have a little box that I'll fit in, and you understand where I go in your system. I don't have that completely thought out, I suppose, but yes, it starts with ourselves, and then it's going to shift. I think it's going to keep changing. So if you try to write a list of, this is who I am now, and you're going to operate off of that, pretty soon you're going to find yourself sliding off of the list, and that's fine. That will work too, as long as you realize when you need to rewrite the list. You need to regenerate it because it's not representative of who you've become. And I think that's part of the program. I think this, who am I? Who are you? It's part of the program. I'm me. I'm this cosmic being that my mother named Todd. And so you can call me Todd if you want. But, well, what are you going to do? Or what I go, we won't know until the time comes what I'm going to do or how I'm going to react or what I'm going to say or how I'm going to answer that question until it's in real time. When I'm doing energy work, I find I can talk about an outline for about 5 minutes. And then if I don't have a live person to work with, it's kind of goes into the all made up world. And it's not real anymore. All right, now I'm just rambling, but hopefully I said something inside of that.
I have one more thing I wanted to add to that. And it's kind of funny, and I've been kind of chuckling as you guys were talking. And I was in a group of people a few years back, and, they were more on a professional level than I was at the time. I was in a more casual setting for myself, and they were in a more professional setting for themselves. And somebody's turned to me and they said, "What do you do?" And I go, "Whatever I want." And they were like, they had no idea how to reply to that. And it made me think about what you guys were just talking about. We can create whatever we want if we really get solid in ourselves. And to that, knowing that, like what you said, Todd, our identities change, but change in all aspects of our lives is our true only absolute. It's really the only absolute we have, that we can say, yeah, this is absolutely true. Change. That's all.
I love that.
Absolutely.
The only constant, right, in physics.
And that's what the whole universe is made up of. Change of seasons, change of years, change of months. I mean, so you're absolutely right. And Todd, I just want to add to what you said as well. I think what you talked about was vital key. I think that when people choose, and that's where I'm going with the whole identity, is to be something you choose, not something that you accept. And I think most people have accepted an identity, and then they're willing to fight for that identity. And that's where we have the issues that we have. And then people are fighting without even understanding why they're fighting, why they don't like each other. They're just that's how it is, and that's what's been told to them. I remember watching this documentary I've heard this for years in my life, and I finally got a chance to watch the reenactment of the war between the Hatfield and the McCoys. That was always used as some form of fighting that showed intense hatred for one another. Like, we're gonna fight you like the Hatfields and McCoys, right? And that's what we used to say in our neighborhood, not really knowing who the Hatfields and McCoys were at all. It's just that we knew their names, but no one understood what the history was behind it, how it got started, how it ended, or any truth behind it. It's just all we knew was Hatfield and McCoys hated one another to the core, and they fought to the death. That was the only context that we had. And people are willing to accept that with an identity, fight to it with its death, or die for it if challenged. And that, to me, if you're going to be so locked into that kind of distinction, it should definitely be something that you chose, not something that you were given. Is my only point I want to say on the identity level. And so now let's talk about change that you mentioned, Rachel, before we go into our musical break. I wanted to keep the song up because through that change and my own self allowing my identity to change by going to Mountains of Hope and being able to meet with Mike Murphy. And then that's the whole reason we're even doing the show together. He's the source of that. He's the origin of that, so to speak. And so I've been working on a Substack article, a write about my experience at Mountains of Hope and how it really changed me, to your point about change. But I realized it healed me first. So healing is something that really resonated with me from Mountains of Hope more than anything else. And I didn't go there to be healed. Didn't realize I needed to be healed. And And through that healing, I was changed. I was transformed. And now I see myself as a completely different person. I no longer identify by my race. And that's a huge thing. Like I said, most people still don't know that part about me who know me and would be shocked by I say that and then think that that's a racial bypassing. And I'm just giving white-skinned people a bypass to say, okay, well, all the things that's been done to my skin people is forgiven because I've reached a spiritual awakening. And it's nothing of the sense. It's just understanding that it's not in my best interest to tie myself to only look at life through that lens, regardless of the history of it at all. And my identity does not say that racism does not exist. My identity says I no longer classify myself by that and to be known by that or operate within that perspective. And that's what that means. And that came as a result of going to Mountains of Hope and being healed and meeting up with individuals like you, Jess, and then Rachel, you going to Mountains of Hope. And so we wanted to create this song for Mike because he had that kind of impact in my life. And I also wanted to be like a love letter to him. So I was thinking about Mountains of Hope. What is really Mountains of Hope? And playing with that thought in my mind. That's where this song originated from. And I wanted to also make it a love letter for Mike to talk about his journey of how he created Mountains of Hope, what led him to make that decision and then take that action, have trust, and then do it with love that he did it with. And so that's what this song is for. We shared it with him on a podcast that we do with him. I wanted to share it with you all because you all know him. And I believe you all can find elements of this song that appeals to you and resonates with you as well. So here's the Mountains of Hope song for Mike.
This is not music. I said to my staff the other day, if we can do one thing, just one thing, that everybody that comes to Mountains of Hope leaves here with zero fear of death. Because then you're totally free. Nothing can hurt you. Because there is no such thing as death. And there's no such thing as birth. It's a big circle, Mike Murphy. Hey! Every sanctuary begins with a wound. The story of a man who planted his deepest grief. 7,000 feet up in the Andes. And it grew into healing for every soul who climbs. 2002, she was 28 years old. Stage 3, he loved her anyway, loved her harder. 10 years together, 9 of them at war. The construct's medicine, poison in the chest. A scalpel, a burn, treat the symptom, ignore the cause. December 1st, 2010, they gave her 6 months. He never blinked, they fought to the final breath. June 2011, Margot flew home. Grief stood at his door with 2 invitations. Destruction or transformation. He chose to transform. Mountains of hope. Mountains of love. Mountains of healing. Mountains of joy. Mountains of gratitude. This is where healing begins. Then came a sister with no husband and no insurance. Talked down or talked over, priced out of her own life. 3 treatments could extend her life, but insurance pays for 1, so 1 is all she gets. And Mike said, here's my credit card, give her what she needs. That is the law of service, the giver rises first. Love from Margot was born from that moment. 200 women held, funded, seen and loved. Then their whisper became the seed. I wish there was a natural way to heal. He answered, mountains of hope, hey. Mountains of love, hey, hey. Mountains of healing, hey. Mountains of joy, hey. Mountains of gratitude. This is where healing began. 2016, he bought the land, 7,000 feet in the Andes outside Medellin. That energy the shamans came to bless. He built the world where the whole organism heals. Detox the body, quiet the civil war in the skull. Open the heart, forgive the inner child until you're fully aligned with your soul. Coherent healing at the Mountains of Hope Sanctuary. Body, mind, heart, and spirit vibrating as one, rising to love energy at 500 hertz. Intentionality in every detail. Organic gardens, 120 fruits and vegetables, pure mineral meditation, food is medicine. No sugar, no salt, only love and healing. Your own immune army multiplied 400%. Return to a body detox, nourished, ready for war. Cacao sweat like fire, and leave with zero fear of death. Mountains of hope, mountains of hope, mountains of love, mountains of healing, mountains of joy, mountains of gratitude. This is where healing begins. 7 days I walked this land I came to teach. The mountains made me a student first. Todd and Pam showed me love, 30 years of covenant. I'm here no matter what. Love is action, not emotion. Angie showed me grace, fighting for her own life, while pouring healing into everyone around her. Grace personified. Jess showed me the law of service, a fully human leader vibrating at the energy of love. And my mother, who flew home in March, led me here to heal. I left vibrating higher than I arrived, because Mike's love for Margot built more than a sanctuary. It helped launch the fully human movement. Grief became purpose, purpose became frequency, the frequency became us. Rachel Land was healed by this man on this land that created a plan to heal others through God's tears. Our first deserving soul. This is what it means to be fully human. I am healed from my pain, from my trauma, from my grief, from my mistakes. I am healed. The walls around my heart came down, and I found God sitting in the ruins. Margot's love is woven into every tree, every mountain view, every intentional detail. One man's grief became 1,000 souls beginning. Mountains of hope, mountains of love, mountains of healing, mountains of healing, mountains of joy, mountains of gratitude. This is where healing begins. This is where healing begins. This is what it means to be fully human. Souls land softly here and learn to fly again, ancestors. Osirahum, I am broadcasting at 500 hertz. Are you picking up?
So that's the Mountains of Hope theme song. What are your thoughts? You all know Mike experienced Mountains of Hope.
Well, I love the song. I love the message, and I'm just really humbled to have had the experience and also to have been led there by Rachel. I remember Rachel made it there first, and I remember she met with the oncologist there before I even got there. And having that experience then prepared for future experiences where it's like, yeah, I just don't even need to like really live with the fear of death. I can be in acceptance and be in the joy of life. And so I just feel like it's such a miracle that we've lived through so much since being drawn to Mountains of Hope from Rachel. All of us have had different healings from coming into that connection.
I had a moment. I couldn't talk yet, but I can now. I can only imagine how Mike reacted to that, because it instantly flashed me back to the first time that you wrote one of your frequencies, and I heard it and it was about me, and I was so touched at the time, because at the time I really didn't know you, King. I had just briefly seen you on a computer screen, and I was so amazed that somebody could share that much love with me, and it brought me back to my whole time at Mountains of Hope. while I was there. I experienced that from everyone there. Strangers showered me with love and held me with love, but not just love, it was unconditional love. There was no conditioning on it in any way whatsoever. And it was so incredibly nourishing to my soul, and it just healed away the layers that I had hidden inside. I love your shares. I'm still recovering. Thank you.
I really enjoy how well you know what you write a song about, King, and how you've obviously studied it and collected all the information, and also just the way you compile sort of the bullet points about what's going on really clarifies the story. It's really an art you have about how to tell a story.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you all for your kind comments, and thank you all for being here to listen. It's different to play this song for other people who don't know Mike at all, and they just evaluating it on the music composition and the sounds and the words and the rhythm. That's all they're really looking at it from. But for folks who know what the words mean and the word and have meaning and being able to share it with you all, it's something different. So I definitely appreciate that and honored by that. But again, Rachel, this goes back to the involvement that I've seen in you as well. And that's why I've always felt that you've been this pillar of the fully human movement. I've learned that because you see gratitude and where you at. You don't focus and see yourself as a victim. And everybody else that I know who've talked about having cancer, and I'm not judging them, but it was always from the victim perspective. This is what's happened to me. I'm a survivor, and everybody has the sympathy for them. But you empowered, and you didn't want the sympathy. You didn't want that. You wanted to look for other ways to help other people. And to me, that's something that needs to be lifted up. And that's where I felt that that's something we can get people around to understand. That's what people want to see. Last night's meeting showed me that, because people were literally asking for that direction. Can we see something authentic? Can we find something real now? Everything's about performances. Everything's about letting folks down and frustrations. And most people in the room definitely are past 45, other than the young girl was just working the event. But everybody else is folks who are degreed up, career professionals, successful people. And it's like, at this stage in our lives, is it more important? And this is when I want to give you all your opportunity to share your thoughts on this question that I saw this on the Alan Watts video, and I thought this was a profound statement. And he said, what is rich really? Does rich really mean having more than others? Or is rich really mean needing less? I was like, wow, I had never thought about it like that. I thought I knew what rich meant. I thought rich meant having more money and you got more things than others. When you look at it from needing less, because he said that a man who sits in a one-bedroom apartment that has abundance of love in his heart has more than a man living in a mansion feeling that everybody's attacking him, but he lives in a mansion. So who's rich in that context? And the construct tell us, they tell us the man in the mansion is rich, and that's what we should aspire to be. Everybody we see who aspires there, we see they're not happy, they're not fulfilled. And the connection you all have with indigenous people, you see that those communities over there can definitely need less and feel more abundant than we do here in America with all the resources that we have.
The more I understand about wealth and richness, the less people and less things I have around me. I had houses and boats and cars and this and things. And then I went to nothing. I had a room that somebody offered me in gratitude, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And now, even as I'm building around myself comforts in life, I struggled with, do I need these? And then I also struggled with kind of fighting against having them. So there's a huge balance in that, because yeah, why not? Why not allow myself comforts? I went a little stringent on that side of it for a while, and I'm like, no, I'm allowed to adorn myself. I'm allowed to love myself. I'm allowed to gift myself, because I'm doing it from a space now that's way different than something that someone who would be considered, well, I was a consumer at one point. I went out shopping every day. Not to say that that's no fun. I mean, brain dead shopping is brain dead shopping, and I've had many times where it's helped me. Now, maybe I'll just go through and I'll look at fashions because I love the patterns and I love the fashions, and I won't even buy anything, but that's besides the point. The point is that my mind has shifted in how I address those kind of things. And certainly Alan Watts is dead on, like, where's the true wealth? Where's the true success? Where's the true richness? And it's right here,
Mm-hmm.
right in my heart. And when I am full and feeling fulfilled in my heart and soul, it doesn't matter. I mean, I could be in a shack in the woods. I could be with nothing in the woods and be completely fulfilled. I could be in a inner city, whatever, not so wonderful living situation. And if my heart's fulfilled, doesn't matter. I have everything I need.
I totally resonate with that. I think earlier in life, I have had a realization that I wanted to be rich, and that number kept changing. And it was a number. Like originally, to be rich as a child would be like to have $100.
It would
And then
be.
as you
Yeah.
get older, it's like it changes and changes. As an adult, it was like, oh, if I could make 100 grand a year, oh, if I could make 1 million, and now it's like, wow, what a distraction. The end, the money end goal can be, and the consumerism hole that you can just completely get lost in. Because richness for me is not much of any of that. And it's the simplest things, and it's the resonant connection, and it's the internal alignment, and the love of self, and the trust, and like all these rings that I've developed with myself and others that actually gives me a very rich feeling that I actually don't need very much material thing and material comforts when I'm sitting in the alignment of these connected rings. Yeah. Thanks for bringing them to the table today, King.
Yeah.
Well, gratitude
Yeah.
for everybody showing up. Any last words, Todd? Thoughts?
Yeah. I just think to keep myself authentic, that I'm not sitting here saying that I am always in gratitude and that I never feel like a victim, and that I never want something more. But I have the most gratitude for having the knowing that, oh yeah, right now I need to find something I'm thankful for, because I'm in a really pissy, shitty mood, and I'm getting angry, and I'm very thankful to come up with that opportunity, that sort of thinking where I can go, oh yeah, if I can just be happy. Oh, there's a bird. It's sitting outside of the hospital window. And go to that space for a minute and see how beautiful it is. Having that skill, I think, is the thing I value the most. I had longer stories, but I don't know if we have time for longer stories. So
Yeah, we're
I'll
getting
leave
at
that
the,
out.
yeah, we're getting at the end of our show. We need to get ready to wrap it up and move right into our next Goddess Tears Circle, which is our next engagement opportunity. And I wanted to make that point real quick before we wrapped up, because this is what we're building. We're building an opportunity, allowing ourselves to have this podcast, engage with individuals who are out there who may also be seekers, and you're seeking something that you found that even though you may have the success for careers, to marriages, to kids in college, you've done all those things, but your soul still feels that it has more room than what your career and life has brought it. Then the Fully Human Movement is an opportunity for you to build. Goddess Tears, this circle that we're building, is a circle that you can join us on Zoom and learn about what it really looks like for the folks who are really doing this work, not just writing about it and giving TED Talks, but living the lives that require. We're challenged, as Todd said, every day to be fully human despite all the challenges in our lives, but still choosing gratitude in those moments. That's what builds that mental muscle, that spiritual muscle, and that faith muscle to help us get through these uncertain times as we're experiencing right now in the world. So with that being said, we're going to bring this episode of Becoming More Fully Human to a close and invite everyone out there who is seeking as a way of finding that peace and happiness, find it internally, look within. And if you're beginning to start looking within and you want to connect with others in that same journey, then that's all. Look for ways to become more fully human. And until next Tuesday, or actually we're going to take off next Tuesday for vacations for all of us, but the following Tuesday, we'll be back here at 11:15 a.m. Until then, that's all. Continue to be more fully human. Thank you.